Hey guys, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. I don't know why this video is playing right now, but that's coming up later. Today I want to talk about the Delphi case, and I'm going to go over the probable cause and kind of make the point that it says in the probable cause, and then compare that to the statement that little Delphi Dicky's attorneys came out with, and just kind of compare what they're saying versus what the probable cause said. It kind of gives us an idea of where they're going to go with this. But the main thing I want to focus on today is the markings on the unspent bullet, because that really confused me. A lot of you know I took forensics, and we talked a lot about being able to identify ammunition and connect it to a specific gun, but it was always after the bullet had been fired. I didn't even realize being able to trace an unspent bullet back to a specific weapon was a thing, that it was even possible. And so, of course, I was confused, and I talked to my husband because he was in law enforcement in the military, and I figured that he would know probably better than anybody. And he was a little bit confused too. And so I got a hold of my sons, and my middle child is in law enforcement right now in the Navy, but not like base security. He's out like escorting people, and he uses literally every weapon. So, and he knows them inside and out, how to take them apart, how they work, like every little detail. And I thought, well, he might be able to explain it. My oldest son, he used to be in the military, and he actually owned a Sig Sauer for a while, I believe. And we were all stumped. My oldest had said, because they said it was cycled through the weapon, which all of us, when we think of cycling through a weapon, I think that means you go from loading it all the way through the cycle of firing it. But apparently not. Apparently we were all wrong. But my oldest said, well, maybe he like repacks his casing. And I hadn't thought of that. Hi, Brett. My oldest is in here if you guys want to say hi to Brett. I hadn't thought of that. I thought, well, maybe it's one that he had previously fired and then they found it. But digging into it a little bit more, my middle child called me, and we were talking it through, and we looked up articles and different things, and there actually are extractor marks that can be left on the bullet, and chamber marks. So I really want to get into that. I've got little clips from articles, but I also have some video and some pictures because I know some of us, we read it and it's kind of like, well, whatever. So I got you. If you're a visual person, I've got you covered. And hopefully by the end of this video, we'll all understand where they're coming from about this unspent round being tied to little Dicky's gun. All right. Oh, and before I get started, I want to ask everyone out there to pray. My brother got diagnosed with COVID. He was supposed to be going to England on Monday to visit. His wife passed last year, and her kids and his grandkids live in England, and he was going to visit them for Christmas, and he got COVID. So now he has to reschedule his trip for when he's feeling better. So if you guys could just send out a prayer and hope that he is doing well quickly, I would appreciate it. Okay, so let's dive in. First, let's get little Dicky off the screen. I'm not going to go over this like line by line by line, at least most of it, but I will a lot of it. I'm going to kind of jump in towards the bottom here where it starts to get into italics because that's kind of where the meat and potatoes of this probable cause is at. And basically on this first page, it's just talking about when they were found, where they were found, the location of the bridge, things like that. Nothing too spectacular to see there. This is page 2, and this is where we kind of start hearing about Bridge Guy, the girls, and some of the witnesses. They refer to them as victim 1 and victim 2. And victim 1 is Abby and victim 2 is Libby. And we know this because they talk about victim 2's phone and the video on victim 2's phone. And we know that was Libby that took the video. So we had kind of heard and kind of speculated. Remember, the video's like 43 seconds. And we just got that one little snippet, guys, down the hill. And we had kind of speculated why we couldn't hear the whole thing. And this goes into that a little bit. It says, the video recovered from victim 2's phone shows victim 1 walking southeast on the Monon High Bridge while a male subject wearing a dark jacket and jeans walks behind her. As the male subject approaches victim 1 and victim 2, one of the victims mentions gun. Near the end of the video, a male is seen and heard telling the girls, guys, down the hill. Oh, I hate even reading that out loud. The girls then begin to proceed down the hill, and the video ends. A still photograph taken from the video and the guys down the hill audio was subsequently released to the public to assist investigators in identifying the male. Victim 1 and victim 2's deaths were ruled homicides. Clothes were found in the Deer Creek belonging to victim 1 and victim 2 south of where their bodies were located. There was also a .40 caliber unspent round less than 2 feet away from victim 2's body between victim 1 and victim 2's bodies. The round was unspent and had extraction marks on it. Okay. So that is what it says in the probable cause. Now, little Dicky's attorneys, they put out a statement, and I'm going to go over just bits and pieces now, but I will read the whole thing for you later because it's just kind of, I get it, they're defensive attorneys, but it's just like, oh, poor little Dicky is, he's innocent and being mistreated and blah, blah, blah. They say the probable cause affidavit seems to suggest that a single magic bullet is proof of Rick's guilt. It is a bit premature to discuss the veracity of this evidence until more discovery is received, but it is safe to say that the discipline of tool mark identification, ballistics, is anything but a science. The entire discipline has been under attack in courtrooms across this country as being unreliable and lacking any scientific validity. we anticipate a vigorous legal and factual challenge to any claims by the prosecution as to the reliability of its conclusions concerning the single magic bullet. And when my middle child called, we had kind of discussed this, that I said, you know, in a way, I feel like this is almost a defense attorney's dream, because yes, there can be marks, but I don't think they would be as specific, as unique to a particular weapon as the lands and grooves that you see on a fired bullet. So I know they're going to fight that. So I found this about chamber marks. And it says one of the most common striated action marks are called chamber marks. Roughness in the chamber of a firearm can scratch the outer walls of a cartridge case when loaded and removed from the chamber. Most chamber marks occur after the cartridge is fired. Cartridge cases expand when fired, pressing out against the walls of the chamber. So none of that really applies because it wasn't fired, right? When they are pulled out of the chamber, the sides of the cartridge case can be scratched. The comparison image below shows chamber marks on a .22 caliber rimfire cartridge case. So that's not anything to get super excited about it. That's just scratch marks, right? So let's get into the extractor marks, because that is specifically what they're talking about in the probable cause. Another action mark usually found in a striated form are those created by the extractor of most auto-loading or repeating firearms. The extractor is a small part, sometimes resembling a hook. My middle child said it's like paws, but sometimes resembling a hook, that is used to remove a cartridge or cartridge case from the chamber of a firearm. The image below shows the extractor of a 9mm Glock pistol hooked into the extractor groove of a cartridge. As the slide of the pistol moves to the rear, the extractor pulls the cartridge case along with it until it is ejected from the pistol. And it goes on to say, come on, the extractor may or may not leave an identifiable mark on the cartridge case. This is true if the cartridge is fired or simply hand-chambered and extracted without firing. Extractor marks may look like those seen in comparison image below. And you can kind of see that. So what does all that mean? I found this guy that explained it really well. He's an attorney and a firearms expert. And I'm going to play this little bit of his video, and I think this will kind of help clear it up for you. It did for me. So let's take a look at that.
When the slide comes back like this, a round is extracted from the chamber with what's called an extractor, which is like a little claw that actually hooks on to this protruding rear edge of the cartridge, pulls it out, and then the ejector sort of kicks it out of the ejection port. So that claw, that extractor that grabs onto that little edge on the back of the cartridge can leave a little mark on the shell casing, even on an unspent round, through the process of extracting that unspent round out of the gun.
All right. So that kind of explains the whole process. And he didn't have a bullet in his weapon, so I made this little clip for you so you can see what happens when you rack your gun. If you have a bullet in the chamber, it ejects it and it flies out. Because I know a lot of people are not familiar with guns, so I just wanted to give you an idea of what we're talking about so you can visualize in your mind what happened out there. Can you hear the herd of dogs? So, my thinking after going over all this and trying to visualize what happened is, now we still don't know how the girls were killed. I'm going to assume they weren't shot, and we'll get into that in just a second. But if he was using that gun to control them, because remember, we got one guy and we got 2 teenage girls. If he was using that gun to intimidate them and control them, he may have racked the gun because that's going to make that noise and kind of signal that, hey, you're about to get shot. He could have racked that gun, and maybe he already had a bullet chambered and he didn't remember. So hey, princess, when he racked the gun to intimidate the girls, that bullet ejected. It went flying out. Now, him being, I don't want to say a normal person because he is a real sicko, but your average person would probably be like the rest of us and think, I didn't fire the bullet. There's no way they can trace that back to me. Or he may not have even realized it happened, because you have to think, he's in this like adrenaline fueled frenzy rage trying to control 2 girls, and he's murdering them and chaos, right? So when he does that, maybe he doesn't even realize that it shot out the side, but he left it there for whatever reason, whether he knew it or not, thinking there's no way they could tie that back to me. No way. And until this came out, I would have agreed. So I really have to give props to the investigators on this one, because obviously if you see a bullet there, you're going to collect it as evidence. That's obvious. But what caused them to dive in this deep? I assume that, like in forensics, you would check the round and see if there's a fingerprint, like a usable fingerprint on there of who loaded that gun. So they probably checked it for fingerprints, but they went that extra step and looked at it microscopically and found those tool marks, those extractor marks. And to me, that's just game changer. But like I said, is it going to be specific enough? And here's what I mean. Now, this is a fired bullet. This is what I'm used to. So in the top of the picture, you're looking down the barrel of the gun, and you can see the different lands and grooves in there, and every gun's barrel is unique. So every bullet that's fired from a weapon can be traced back to that weapon, because the picture at the bottom is a fired bullet, and it has the lands and grooves that coincide with the barrel. So that's like when you see them and they have a suspected weapon and they're firing it like into that big bin of water. They fire it, and then they can compare that bullet to the one from the crime scene and see if they match. I just wonder, are these extractor marks as specific as what we're seeing in this picture? And my middle child and I were talking, as a defense attorney, I would be going out and getting other Sig Sauer P226 guns, same make and model that little Dicky had, and firing them, and then comparing, well, not firing them, but chambering and extracting bullets from them and comparing those marks to the one that is tied to little Dicky, and just see how similar they are. Now, keep in mind, this is a probable cause affidavit. They're not going to lay out every piece of evidence. They're not going to lay out their entire case for the defense. They're going to only put in there the bare minimum that's necessary to get this guy arrested. So I don't think this, as his attorneys call it, magic bullet, is their strongest evidence. There has to be more. I hope there's more, because I am a little nervous about those marks. Now that I understand it, I realize they're there, but how individual and specific are they? That is my concern on that. But I hope that kind of explains to you a little bit better how they have traced a round that was not even fired back to little Dicky. Okay, so this is page 3 of the probable cause, and this is going into the timeline. This is where different witnesses encountered who they think is little Dicky on the trail. So it's just like where they were, what they were doing, what time, just building this timeline, right? And towards the bottom, we get into this witness who said she advised she walked to the Monon High Bridge and observed a male matching the one from victim two's video. She described the male she saw as a white male wearing blue jeans and a blue jean jacket. She advised he was standing on the first platform of the Monon High Bridge, approximately 50 feet from her. She advised that she turned around at the bridge and continued her walk. She advised approximately halfway between the bridge and the parking area across from Mears Farm, she passed two girls walking towards Monon High Bridge. She advised she believed the girls were victim 1 and victim 2. Video from the Hoosier Harvest Store shows at 1:49 p.m. a white car matching name redacted vehicle traveling away from the entrance across from the Mears Farm. I'm going to assume that's probably Kelsey German that they see driving away. She's the one that dropped the girls off. That's Libby's sister. Move it up here a little bit. Let's see. Okay. The witness advised when she was leaving, she noted a vehicle was parked in an odd manner at the old Child Protective Services building. She said it was not odd for vehicles to be parked there, but she noticed it was odd because of the manner it was parked, backed in near the building. Investigators received a tip from name redacted in which he stated he was on his way. Let me pull up the next one. And if you remember, they were asking for information about who was parked at the Child Protective Services building. So the next witness says that he was on his way to Delphi on State Road 25 around 2:10 p.m. on February 13th, 2017. He observed a purple PT Cruiser or small SUV type vehicle parked on the south side of the old CPS building. He stated it appeared as though it was backed in as to conceal the license plate of the vehicle. Both witnesses drew diagrams of where they saw the vehicle parked, and their diagrams generally matched as to the area the vehicle was parked and the manner in which it was parked. Witness advised he remembered seeing a smaller, dark-colored car parked at the old CPS building. He described it as possibly being a smart car. Redacted name. Vehicle is seen leaving at 2:28 p.m. on the Hoosier Harvest Store video. So, take this down for a second. So, little Dicky's attorneys say that little Dicky owned a Ford Focus in February of 2017. His Ford Focus is not in any way similar to the distinctive look of a PT Cruiser or smart car that was described by the witnesses. It seems that the CCSD is trying to bend facts to fit their narrative. So, here's a purple PT Cruiser. Here's a smart car. And here is a 2016 Ford Focus, which is what little Dicky owned. Now, do they look similar? Not necessarily, but think about it. You're just driving by and you kind of glance over. You know, maybe you don't know that much about cars and you're just like, I don't know, it was a little car, kind of like a smart car. I mean, I could see how somebody could mistake his car for one of these two cars. I don't know. You'll have to let me know what you think. I just thought it would be interesting to put them all up here together and take a look at them. The front end, like the lights, the shape of the lights maybe are pretty similar. A PT Cruiser is pretty distinctive, but if it was backed in, really close to that building. And like I said, you're not up there in the lot with the car. You're just driving by and kind of notice it. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that it was little Dicky's car. I really don't. But of course, you know, the attorneys are going to argue that because that's their job. To go back, I kind of forgot to mention this part. The witnesses that said that they saw, yep, that's the magic bullet notes, sorry. The 3 juveniles encountered a male walking from Freedom Bridge towards the Monon High Bridge. And they described like his demeanor and what he was wearing and things like that. And little Dicky's attorney said, Rick volunteered to meet with a conservation officer outside of the local grocery store to offer up details of his trip to the trail on the day in question. Rick tried to assist with the investigation and told the police that he did recall seeing 3 younger girls on the trail that day. His contact with the girls was brief and of little significance. Rick does not recall if this interaction with the conservation officer was tape recorded, but believes that the conservation officer scribbled notes on a notepad as Rick spoke to him. So as far as that goes, that kind of matches up. They say that they saw him, and he says that he saw the 3 of them. So that kind of matches up. I don't know what their argument really is going to be about that. But let's see, it goes on. Investigators spoke with, name redacted, who said that she was traveling east on 300 North on February 13th, 2022, and observed a male subject walking west on the north side of 300 North, away from the Monon High Bridge. Witness advised that the male subject was wearing a blue-colored jacket and blue jeans and was muddy and bloody. She further stated that it appeared he had gotten into a fight. Investigators were able to determine from watching the video from the Hoosier Harvest Store that, name redacted, was traveling on County Road 300 North at approximately 3:57 p.m. Through interviews, electronic data, photographs, and video from the Hoosier Harvest Store, thank God for whatever the Hoosier Harvest Store is, investigators determined that there were other people on the trail that day after 2:13 p.m. Those people were interviewed, and none of those individuals encountered the male subject referenced above, witnessed by the juvenile girls, blank and blank. Further, none of those individuals witnessed victim 1 and victim 2. So if you think about it, 2:13 is when the confrontation happens between little Dicky and Abby and Libby. And then he's seen around 3:57-ish walking muddy and bloody up the road, I'm assuming to get back to his car. He had almost 2 hours with those girls. I don't want to consider what might have happened in those 2 hours. Like I said, we don't know how they were killed. And the reason that I said I don't think they were shot is because I feel like it would have been stronger for their probable cause to have a fired bullet that they could connect to his gun than the unspent round. So I really think the gun was there just as an intimidation factor. I really would be shocked to hear that they were shot and those bullets weren't recovered for comparison. But yeah, almost 2 hours with them. And we've heard, that they were staged, they were posed, that there were signatures at the crime scene. So I can't even imagine what he did with all of that time. Okay. Investigators reviewing prior tips encountered a tip narrative from an officer who interviewed Richard M. Allen in 2017. Now, I assume this is probably what little Dicky's attorneys were talking about when he talked to this conservation officer. Mr. Allen was on the trail between 13:30 and 15:30. He parked at the Old Farm Bureau building and walked to the new Freedom Bridge. Remember that. Old Farm Bureau building. Remember that. It's significant. While at the Freedom Bridge, he saw 3 females. He noted one was taller and had brown or black hair. He did not remember description, nor did he speak with them. He walked from the Freedom Bridge to the High Bridge. He did not see anybody, although he stated he was watching a stock ticker on his phone as he walked. He stated there were vehicles parked at the High Bridge trailhead, however, did not pay attention to them. He did not take any photos or video. His cell phone did not list an IMEI, but did have the following, and there's letters, numbers, potential follow-up information. Who were the 3 girls walking in the area of the Freedom Bridge? Investigators believe Mr. Allen was referring to the former Child Protective Services building, as there was not a Farm Bureau building in the area, nor had there been. So, according to little Dicky's attorneys, he wants to be, all helpful, give as much information as he can to help this investigation. We all knew they were looking for the cars parked at the old CPS building. He's right there in Delphi. He's talking to the police. He damn well knew they were looking to see who was parked there. And he knew it wasn't a Farm Bureau building. So why wouldn't he just say, oh, I was parked at the old CPS building? You put yourself on the trail, which I can only assume he did because he knew he had been seen by people. So he kind of wanted to give himself like a story of, yeah, I was there. Yeah, they saw me, but I didn't have anything to do with it. But yeah, I was there. He didn't want to look like he was there and he didn't come forward or something like that. So he, he's up front and he goes up there and he's like, yeah, I was there. But why lie about where your car was parked, and why say it's at a building that never even existed? It's weird. But carrying on. Investigators discovered Richard Allen owned 2 vehicles in 2017, a 2016 black Ford Focus and a 2006 gray Ford 500. Investigators observed a vehicle that resembled Allen's 2016 Ford Focus on the Hoosier Harvest Store video at 1:27 p.m. traveling westbound on County Road 300 North in front of the Hoosier Harvest Store, which coincided with his statement that he arrived around 1:30 p.m. at the trails. Investigators note witnesses described the vehicle parked at the former CPS building as a PT Cruiser, small SUV, or smart car. Investigators believe these descriptions are similar in nature to a 2016 Ford Focus. On October 13, 2022, Richard Allen was interviewed again by investigators 5 years later. He advised he was on the trails on February 13, 2017. He stated that he saw juvenile girls on the trails east of the Freedom Bridge and that he went on to the Monon High Bridge. Richard Allen further stated he went out onto the Monon High Bridge to watch the fish. This bridge is like 65 feet tall. Who the hell goes 65 feet up in the air to watch fish? Somebody had a good idea. I don't remember who it was. It was like a former profiler or somebody. And they were saying, we think this was like a catfish situation. So what he means by watching the fish may not be what we're thinking he means by watching the fish. And I thought that was pretty smart. But yeah, he went up there to watch fish. Later in his statement, he said he walked out onto the first platform on the bridge. He stated he then walked back, sat on a bench on the trail, and then left. He stated he parked his car on the side of an old building, which matches where they said they saw that car parked. They said it was back up near the building. He told investigators that he was wearing blue jeans and a blue or black Carhartt jacket with a hood. He advised he may have been wearing some type of head covering as well. He further claimed he saw no one else except for the juvenile girls he saw east of the Freedom Bridge. He told investigators that he owns firearms and they are at his home. Richard M. Allen's wife, Kathy Allen, also spoke to investigators. She confirmed that Richard did have guns and knives at the residence. She also stated that Richard still owns a blue Carhartt jacket. On October 13, 2022, investigators executed a search warrant of Richard Allen's residence at 1967 North Whiteman Drive, Delphi, Carroll County, Indiana. Among other items, officers located jackets, boots, knives, and firearms, including a Sig Sauer Model P226 40 cal pistol with serial number U625627. Between October 14, 2022 and October 19, 2022, the Indiana State Police Laboratory performed an analysis on Allen's Sig Sauer Model P226. The laboratory performed a physical examination and classification of the firearm, function test, barrel and overall length measurement, test firing, ammunition component characterization, microscopic comparison, and NIBIN. The laboratory determined the unspent round located within 2 feet of victim 2's body had been cycled through Richard M. Allen's Sig Sauer Model P226. The laboratory remarked, an identification opinion is reached when the evidence exhibits an agreement of class characteristics and sufficient agreement of individual marks. Sufficient agreement is related to the significant duplication of random striated impressed marks as evidenced by the correspondence of a pattern or combination of patterns of surface contours. The interpretation of identification is subjective in nature and based on relevant scientific research and reporting examiners' training and experience. That right there is what the defense is going to jump on. That it's subjective, that, how much training, how much experience did this particular examiner have with comparing the ejector marks. This is what they're going to jump on, and this is why I hope there is more really concrete evidence against little Dicky, because if we're hanging our hats on this unspent bullet, I'm worried. But I really think they have more. I mean, this jackass kept everything. He still has the jacket. He still had the gun. If he has knives, he probably still has the knife that he used. I mean, if he still had that Ford Focus, which I'm pretty sure that's what they towed away from his house, there could be blood in there. So surely they've got some really strong evidence to tie him to this. Even 5 years later, they could still find something. Okay, it goes on to say, investigators then ran the firearm and found that the firearm was purchased by Richard Allen in 2001. Richard Allen voluntarily came to the Indiana State Police Post on October 26, 2022. He spoke with investigators and stated that he never allowed anyone to use or borrow the Sig Sauer Model P226 firearm. When asked about the unspent bullet, he did not have an explanation of why the bullet was found between the bodies of Victim 1 and Victim 2. He again admitted he was on the trail, but denied knowing Victim 1 or Victim 2 and denied any involvement in their murders. To me, this is great, because I guarantee you they asked him if he ever loaned that gun to anybody else, if anybody else had used that gun, and then said, well, we found this bullet and it ties back to your gun. They probably didn't even mention the bullet when they started questioning him about the gun, just so they could get him to say, nope, I'm the only one that ever had possession of it. Because if they can tie that back to him, then he has flat out said he's the only one who's used it. So that was good. That's good. We just have to pray. Carroll County Sheriff's Department detective, I don't know why their name's redacted, but it is, has been part of the investigation since it started in 2017. He has had an opportunity to review and examine evidence gathered in this investigation. Detective whoever, along with other investigators, believe the evidence... God, I don't know what is wrong with my mouth today. The evidence gathered shows that Richard Allen is the male subject seen on the video from victim 2's phone, who forced the victims down the hill. Further, that the victims were forced down the hill by Richard Allen and led to the location where they were murdered. So, they're not coming right out saying he led them down there and he murdered them. They're saying he forced them off the bridge down the hill to the location where they were. So we're going to talk about that and what little Dicky's attorneys have to say about that in a minute. As far as my talking, I haven't felt right today, but I had lunch, and I packed my lunch with a bunch of potassium because I was worried it was my potassium starting to drop again. So I don't know what is wrong with me. I just cannot talk today. Okay. Through the statements and photographs of the juvenile females and the statement of blank and blank were at the southeast edge of the trail at 12:43 p.m. east of the Freedom Bridge at 1:26 p.m. and walked across the former railroad overpass over Old State Route 25 after 1:26 p.m. and before 1:46 p.m. They walked the entirety of the trail and observed only one person, an adult male. Whoever's vehicle is seen on Hoosier Harvest Store video at 1:46 p.m. and leaving at 2:14 p.m. And she stated she only saw one adult male, blank and blank, described the male in similar manners, wearing similar clothing, leading investigators to believe all four saw the same male individuals. Investigators believe the male observed by blank and blank is the same male depicted in the video from victim 2's phone due to the description of the male by the four females watching the male in the video. Furthermore, victim 2's video was taken at 2:13 p.m. and blank saw only one male while she was on the trail at approximately 1:46 to 2:14 p.m. All right, let's get to page 7. We are flying through here, guys. All right. Investigators believe Richard Allen was the male seen by blank and the male seen in victim 2's video. Richard Allen told investigators he was on the trail from 1:30 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. that day. Video from Hoosier Harvest Store. I should be sponsored by them at this point. Video from Hoosier Harvest Store shows a vehicle that matches the description of Richard Allen's vehicle passing at 1:27 p.m. towards the former CPS building. The clothing he had told investigators he was wearing matched the clothing of the male in victim 2's video and the clothing descriptions provided by blank and blank. A vehicle matching the description of his 2016 Ford Focus is seen at or around 2:10 p.m., 2:14 p.m., and 2:28 p.m. at the former CPS building. Through his own admissions, Richard Allen walked the trails and eventually hiked to the Monon High Bridge and walked out onto the Monon High Bridge. A male subject matching Richard Allen's description was not seen on the trail after 2:13 p.m. Investigators identified other individuals on the trails or County Road 300 North between 2:30 and 4:11 p.m. None of those individuals saw a male subject matching the description of Richard Allen on the trail. Furthermore, Richard Allen stated that he only saw 3 girls on the trail who investigators believed to be blank, blank, blank. Investigators believe Richard Allen was not seen on the trail after 2:13 p.m. because he was in the woods with victim 1 and victim 2. An unspent .40 caliber round between the bodies of victim 1 and victim 2 was forensically determined to have been cycled through Richard Allen's Sig Sauer Model P226 Investigators were able to determine he had owned it since 2001. Richard Allen stated that he had not been on that property where the unspent round was found. He did not know, hang on just a second here. Computer's fighting me. Okay. He had not been on the property where the unspent round was found, and he did not know the property owner, which was Ron Logan, who has since passed away, and that he had no explanation as to why a round cycled through his firearm would be in that location. Furthermore, he stated that he never allowed anyone to use or borrow the Sig Sauer Model P226. Investigators believe that after the victims were murdered, Richard Allen returned to his vehicle by walking down County Road 300 North. Investigators believe he was seen by blank walking back to his vehicle on County Road 300 North with clothes that were muddy and bloody. Blank, along with investigators, believe the statements made by the witnesses because the statements corroborate the timeline of the death of the two victims, as well as coincide with the admission made by Richard Allen. Further, the accounts relayed by blank and blank are similar in nature, and timestamps on photographs taken by blank correspond to the times the juvenile females said they were on the trail and saw the male individual. So maybe he's just really unlucky. Maybe he just happened to be there that day. He happened to be wearing the same clothes as Bridge Guy. He happened to park at this building but forgot what it was, and his car looks similar to the murderer's car. I mean, maybe this guy just has really shitty luck. I don't know. And this is the last page, and it's basically just, having the court enter the following minutes, saying that, this probable cause affidavit was executed by the sheriff, blah, 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 blah. All right. So now we're going to get into, let's see, should we talk about, let's talk about the lawyers. Like I said, I get it. They are defense attorneys. They have a job to do, but wow. So it says, we do not want to try this case in the media, and we intend to adhere to the Indiana rules of professional conduct that provide guidance on pretrial publicity. However, the police and prosecutor's office have conducted many press conferences over the 5+ years of this investigation and following our client's arrest. On the other hand, Rick's ability to assert his innocence has been reduced to only one short post-hearing press conference. Accordingly, we feel it appropriate, necessary, and within the bounds of our rules of professional conduct to make a few comments concerning the probable cause affidavit and Rick's innocence. Rick is a 50-year-old man who has never been arrested nor accused of any crime in his entire life. He is innocent and completely confused as to why he has been charged with these crimes. The police did not contact Rick after Libby German and Abby Williams went missing. Rather, Rick contacted the police and voluntarily discussed being on the trail that day. Like many people in Delphi, Rick wanted to help in any way he could. Rick contacted the police to let them know that he had walked on the trail that day, as he often did. Without Rick coming forward, the police probably would not have had any way of knowing that he was on the trail that day. Rick volunteered to meet with I already read that. That's conservation officer. All right. After Rick shared his information with law enforcement officials, he went back to his job at the local CVS and didn't hear from police for more than 5 years. The next time Rick heard from police was in October 2022. This was approximately 2 weeks before a contested sheriff's election and within days of a federal lawsuit filed against the Carroll County Sheriff's Office by its former second-in-command. Hang on. For some reason, these are not in order. Okay, by its former second in command, Michael Thomas. In the lawsuit, Thomas claims that he had made suggestions and offered assistance in the investigation of a high-profile child homicide investigation, but those suggestions and offers were rejected by the sheriff. Thomas further claimed that the sheriff and others in the department feared the disagreements with Thomas would become publicized as a result of the political campaign for sheriff. Thomas claims in the suit that he was ultimately demoted and replaced by Tony Liggett, who later that year won the 2022 election for sheriff. Furthermore, Thomas claims he was also removed from high-profile cases. Rick was ultimately arrested on or about October 28, 2022. In the 5+ years since Rick volunteered to provide information to the police, Rick did not get rid of his vehicle or his guns and did not throw out his clothing. He did not alter his appearance. He did not relocate himself to another community. He did what any innocent man would do and continued with his normal routine, except for that little stint that he went to rehab for like 30 days. The probable cause affidavit seems to suggest, I think this is the magic bullet. The prosecutor mentioned at the last hearing his belief that others may have been involved in the killing, yet there was no mention in the probable cause affidavit about a second suspect involved in the killing. The defense is confused by such discrepancies in the investigation and will be in a better position to respond as more discovery is received. At this point in time, we have received very limited information about this case and look forward to having something more to view than that which was offered up in the sparse PCA. Moving forward, it is our intent to scrutinize the discovery as it is received and give the necessary attention to the volumes of tips that we are receiving. To the extent we continue to discover information that points to Rick's innocence, we will offer up this information to the public so long as we are not prohibited from doing so as a result of the recent request by the prosecutor for a gag order by the Indiana Rules of Professional Conduct. So, they want tips. It says, on Rick's behalf, we argue to have the PCA unsealed. Rick has nothing to hide. As importantly, we are hoping that we would receive tips that would assist us in proving his innocence. Not surprisingly, we have been inundated with tips from a variety of sources, all of which will be vetted by our team. Although it is the burden of the prosecutor to prove Rick's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, the defense team looks forward to conducting its own investigation concerning Rick's innocence. We appreciate those that have reached out to support his cause. They don't have a tip line or anything set up yet, but yeah. Like I said, I get it. They're defense attorneys. They're doing their job, but there's so much. And like I said, you have to remember, this is a probable cause affidavit. This is not show them your whole hand, show them everything you have, give them your whole case. No, it's give them the bare minimum to get this guy arrested. So we don't know what more they have. And I feel like it's a lot because even just circumstantially, it looks like it's little Dicky, right? He puts himself there. He's wearing the same clothes. He's identified by witnesses that viewed the video and said, yeah, that's the guy. He drives the car that's similar to the ones described. He was parked at that building. He was seen walking muddy and bloody. The bullet ties back to his gun. There's so much that points at him. But they say he's innocent. I would be shocked. I would be completely floored if it's not little Dicky. I really would. Like I said, unless he has the absolute worst luck in the world. So now let's take a look at his charging documents. There's one for each victim, but they read exactly the same. So I will just read one and you'll know what both of them said. So, count 1, murder, a felony. Nicholas C. McClelland, being first duly sworn upon his oath, says that on or about February 13th, 2017, in the county of Carroll, the state of Indiana, Richard M. Allen did kill another human being, to wit, victim 1, which is Abby, while committing or attempting to commit kidnapping of victim 1, all of which is contrary to the form of the statute in such cases made and provided, to wit, IC 3542112, and against the peace and dignity of the state of Indiana. I affirm under the penalty of perjury as specified in IC 35441-2-1 that the foregoing representations are true. So he's charged the same thing for Abby and Libby. And in here, they're saying it was in the process of attempting to kidnap them, which kind of makes you wonder, was he trying to take them completely away from the area and something went sideways and that's why they ended up being murdered where they were? Did he plan to murder them there the whole time? Or was his plan to take them away somewhere else? Because they're saying he was trying to kidnap them. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And his lawyers have put in for a change of venue, of course. And again, I get it because they're defense lawyers, right? But honestly, I understand. This guy, it would be so hard to get him a fair trial in Delphi. And of course, we don't want there to be a mistrial or anything like that. But honestly, it's going to be a hard trial anywhere, especially in the state of Indiana. I mean, everybody knows about this. Everybody knows about this guy. It's really going to be hard to find a jury that's like, huh? Who? I mean, maybe, but definitely not close to Delphi. So this is what they put in their documents for their motion for change of venue from the county. Comes now the accused Richard Allen by and through counsel Brad Rozzi and Andrew J. Baldwin, and pursuant to Criminal Rule 12A of the Indiana Rules of Criminal Procedure, request that this court change venue from Carroll County. In support of said motion, the accused and his counsel swears and affirms the following. On October 28, 2022, the state of Indiana filed a probable cause affidavit and charging information alleging that Richard Allen murdered victim 1 and victim 2 on or about February 13, 2017. That the allegations stem from the highly publicized death of 2 Carroll County teenagers. That even before Richard Allen had been accused of these crimes, the matter had been highly publicized. The extensive media attention began while the victims were missing. The extensive media attention continued after the victims were found. The extensive media attention continued for the next 80 months, 5+ years, in a variety of formats until Richard Allen was arrested. Coverage on local, statewide, and national television media, coverage on local, statewide, and national print media, coverage on several podcasts that reach local, state, national, and international audiences. Page 2. Coverage on the internet and a variety of social media platforms, including Twitter, Reddit, YouTube, and Facebook. The media coverage included multiple press conferences by state and local authorities, including press conferences in which the elected prosecutor participated. The extensive media attention continued after Richard Allen was arrested, including the following: coverage on local, statewide, and national television media, coverage on local, statewide, national, and international print media, coverage on a variety of social media platforms, including Twitter, YouTube, Reddit, and Facebook. After the arrest of Richard Allen, a press conference was held by state and local authorities. Although it could be argued that the amount of publicity that this particular case has received in the past 5+ years will make it difficult to find a jury that has not heard of this case, Richard Allen's defense team has gleaned statistical data that would strongly indicate that moving the case trial just 150 miles away would significantly reduce the likelihood of obtaining a tainted jury pool. That since his arrest, data procured from Google Trends and Google Ads details the amount of internet interest through Google's searches for Richard Allen, and the data is quite telling. During the month of October, the search for Richard Allen in Carroll County ranged between 1,000 and 10,000 searches for a county with just over 20,000 residents. On average, around 1 in every 2 of Carroll County residents have conducted online searches of Richard Allen during the month of October following his arrest. Comparatively speaking, Fort Wayne is a city with over 260,000 residents, roughly 13 times the size of Carroll County. In the month of October following his arrest, the average monthly searches for Richard Allen in Fort Wayne ranged between 1,000 and 10,000 searches. On average, therefore, 1 in every 26, 3.8462% residents in Fort Wayne have performed an online search of Richard Allen, compared to 1 in every 2, 50% residents of Carroll County conducting the same internet search of Richard Allen after his arrest. Fort Wayne is less than 100 miles from Delphi, but in that 100 miles, internet searches fell from roughly 50% of residents in Carroll County Googling Richard Allen to less than 5% of residents Googling Richard Allen. This would mean that Carroll County residents have searched Richard Allen over 10 times more often than those residents in Fort Wayne, a city less than 100 miles from Delphi. Presumably, jury pools from counties even farther away would have searched Richard Allen. In addition, according to various sources, as many as 300 people were actively involved in the search of the 2 victims while they were missing. The 2022 population of Delphi, Indiana is under 3,000 residents, and therefore it may be the case that as much as roughly 10% of the Delphi population was actively involved in participating for the search for the victims, and presumably, therefore, arguably, heavily invested in the matter and the outcome of the case. Those involved in the search for the victim, in addition to showing a strong investment in the case, arguably could be called as witnesses, or at a minimum, their involvement in the search should prevent them from serving on the jury, as they may have information concerning the layout of the area searched that could infect the jury, and have opinions based upon their involvement in the search for the victims. Additionally, arguably, any of the family and friends of anyone involved in the search for the victims could be tainted as well from serving on a jury. Additionally, many Carroll County residents have been involved in some aspects of this case, whether it be in an investigative capacity, police, or as fact witnesses that could be called as witnesses in the case, or those that search for victims, or residents who simply are interested in the matter and have conducted their own independent investigation. Additionally, because of the small number of residents in Carroll County juxtaposed against the large percentage of the population that may have been involved in one of the capacities detailed in the previous paragraph, the likelihood for a tainted jury pool is excessive. During the 5 years following the disappearance of the victims, the Indiana State Police and other law enforcement agencies established an active command post in Delphi to conduct interviews and press conferences, all of which increased the interest in the investigation. This increased exposure lends itself to the tainting of jurors and increased possibility of a biased jury panel. While it is impossible for the defense to accurately predict having received only minimal discovery, it is likely that law enforcement investigation has conducted possibly hundreds of interviews of potential witnesses and other community members that may or may not have information regarding the crime. Again, the raw number of people in the Carroll County community, directly or indirectly involved with the investigation, juxtaposed with the small number of residents in Carroll County, render it impossible to find jurors without connection to the case or to someone involved in the case, or without preconceived notions about Richard Allen's guilt or innocence. Presumably, residents from other counties around Indiana, especially further away from Carroll County, will not include any residents who are in fact witnesses or family or friends or fact witnesses or those involved in the investigation or those that have conducted their own investigation or participated in the search for the victims or who have entrenched opinions on the case based upon, in part, their knowledge of witnesses or facts from the case. It is common sense to presume that residents from counties further away from Carroll County will not have the same level of investment in the case and therefore will be able to more fairly decide the matter without concern about how their verdict may affect their relationships with other Carroll County residents. Additionally, the amount of media coverage of the case has been so extensive that the court was compelled to engage numerous law enforcement personnel to ensure the safety and security of all actors, including the accused, from any actual or perceived threats of harm that surrounded a somewhat simple pretrial hearing in the case. Subjecting potential jurors to such an environment in what may be a multi-week trial would undoubtedly distract jurors to a point that impartiality could not be obtained. Additionally, the fact that the prosecutor requested that the probable cause affidavit be sealed and that the original sitting judge, sua sponte, recused himself from the case is anecdotal evidence that both the prosecutor and prior judge also recognized the magnitude of interest and publicity in the case and the practical problems associated with the interest and publicity in Carroll County. Additionally, Richard Allen was a community member who for many years worked at CVS in Delphi. As CVS is the type of business that is commonly visited by the general public, Richard Allen would have come in close contact with many of the Delphi and Carroll County citizens, creating another real concern of a high probability of bias among potential jurors in Carroll County. The Richard Allen defense team believes the best means to avoid a tainted jury pool and to receive a fair venue for both sides would be I just completely lost my place, would be to venue the matter to a county at least 150 miles from Carroll County and to conduct the jury trial in the chosen county. I swear under penalties of perjury that the statements contained in this pleading are true and accurate to the best of my knowledge. Signed by Richard Allen and Andrew J. Baldwin, attorney for Richard Allen. So, I get it. And rather than risk a mistrial, I guess I would rather see it moved. Because it is going to be hard to find a jury pool. Like I said, even in the whole state, I would think it would be challenging. But with that being such a small, tight-knit community, I see where they're coming from on that one. But what do you guys think about the probable cause affidavit and being able to tie that unspent round to the gun after everything that I showed you today? Do you think those marks are going to be distinctive enough? Do you think that's going to hold up? And what other evidence do you think they have against little Dicky that will nail him to the wall? I hope. And do you think there is anybody else involved? Do you think that there is someone else involved in these murders? And if so, who? Let me know in the comments. Give this a thumbs up, please, on your way out. If you didn't on your way in, give it a thumbs up. Share it out there so we can get all this information to as many people as possible. If you haven't already, I would encourage you to subscribe to the channel and click the bell to all so you get notified. Hopefully, if YouTube gets their notifications figured out, you'll get notified when I go live or when I upload a video. Thank you guys so much for spending about an hour of your Friday with me. I really appreciate it. Talking about little Dicky being on the naughty list. And I hope you all have great plans ahead for your weekend. And I will be here making videos for you if we don't get blown away. We have a wind advisory again. So, as always, I will see you all in the next one. Bye.